Hello. Oh, it got a little darker all of a sudden. Every time I go to adjust it, because it's too bright or too something, it changes the other way. Whatever. Close enough. Okay, hello. I was trying to figure out how to play music at the same time, but I don't apparently have things set up so that way I can hear things through my speakers at the same time. It wants to play through my microphone, which does not have speakers attached to it, and it's just like, nope, too complicated right now. Like I used to. I don't know what I did. Change settings. Yeah. Gotta go through my settings and figure it out, I'm sure. There's a place that I can adjust that, but I was like, I could play some music in the background. Maybe not. But I'll figure it out eventually. If nothing else. I don't know. I know that theoretically it's just trying to play on my microphone, but where I need to change that setting, I don't know. Oh, you managed to set sleeves on the first try? That is worth celebration. Very exciting. Take what you can get sort of thing on that's for sure. Alright, very slightly, there you go. Move you just enough. There we are. Yes, better. Not that I'm doing anything terribly exciting today, but it's still a thing. And that is why I'm here, because I have a lot of this thing to do. So there's no reason for me to do so without something to keep me at least a little bit occupied. Still a lot of rows. It's like I could go through and do dots, but I feel like that would be rather imperfect when I get to the curved sections. I was afraid I was just going to start getting annoyed with myself, so going with this instead. Oh, you finished the bodice. Awesome. Hooray. I am struggling to manage to get anything done, so getting anything finished or close to finish is pretty impressive. I'm kind of in that interim where I can only do small projects for a little bit. I don't want to start a really big project and then have to leave it off because I have other things that need to happen suddenly. So small projects, but then I just can't bring myself to care enough. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, one more, 12, and then I can start doing the weird versions. Cool. So we'll see. Detachable cuffs and collars. Oh yeah. Yeah, those are definitely accessories. Okay, so that gives me the 12 rows that I said I was probably going to need. And then what I need to do is figure out. Actually, what I really need to do is then figure out vertical spacing. I'll need more, but I need them in angles. So it gets complicated. Oh, I can proportion that out, and that might help a little bit. Roughly where that is. So I have, I'll say 12 inches to there, and 6 to there. So I will have 23 inches across that. Okay, so I've got 23 inches there. I swear, when I did this earlier, I adjusted how bright it was because it was just getting to be nothing but bright white, and then it just the other way. Alright, so 23, if I have that, and that again. One section, 2 sections, 3 sections. So basically I'm dividing it into, no, because if I do, yes. Okay, so 3 sections. So we're just 7 2/3 each time. So there. And am I correct on that? Yes. All right, so those are the 3 sections. Up, down, up. Okay. So that doesn't give me exactly what I'm doing, but that's a start. That might be slightly less than that now that I think about how I need to do this, but we'll figure it out. Okay, so the other question I've got, across a good chunk of this is straight, which is fine. I will just vertical lines it. I feel like it needs to spread. It's very slight curve, so I'm not too worried about it. I think we should be okay. So, next question is that I need to bring this down. I have 23 inches. I'm just going to work on the halves because honestly that makes more sense than trying. I'm pretty sure this is the back. That's the front. That's why I marked it. It's like, I've already forgotten. So, front. So, yeah. So up here, at smallest, we're bringing it down to 4 inches, but that's at its smallest. At will be, well, that's not even, because I was going to do that. All right, so I can measure it down from there. So here, where I'd really be starting it, is more like 4.5, 5. Okay. So I'm coming down 3/4 of an inch. It's going to be closer to 4.5. And then overall, 3.5 inches down at the wider point, 6.5. So what I'm thinking is, nothing really, my pattern. It's not something I've thought about before. Like being able to, if you're working in like needing it smaller, top versus bottom, certain stitches you could probably pull tighter than others, but it should be okay. So if I'm aiming for, let's say 5 inches, I'll let out as we go. That makes sense why they do those patterns that way. 5 inches, because I can pull in a little tighter at the top. So 5 inches. When I did this, I ended up with what honestly could be, depending on how snug I pulled things, 3 to 3.5. So that was, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So really it's like about 30 will get you 3 inches. I just don't count those other 2. So, yeah, it is a lot of work, but it's not like difficult. It's just a little tedious. Like the only difficult part that I'm getting off of this is just figuring stuff out at the beginning. So the math that I ended up doing is basically that each one of these ideally sits at about 1/10 of an inch. When I pulled them together with the like tightness that I was working with, I could definitely go tighter or looser, and therefore that will help adjust things. Wait, I was measuring the let's not be okay. That I was like, wait, this is angled. I gotta make sure that I'm not measuring based off of, because that's a pretty big difference. All right, so the point that I was measuring, I was saying it's gonna be about 5 inches. It's actually 22. So I should probably, pull paper out for this. So I have 22 inches to pull in, and we're pulling it in to 5 inches. Each pleat is about 1/10 of an inch. So we need, or really each gather, whatever you want to say. So we need 50 gathers in order to make 5 inches work. So if I'm doing 50 across 22 inches, not quite half an inch. Let's see here. I don't quite do. I feel like I can pull it a little snugger than that. Because 1/4 inch I know is going to be way too many. Like pulling in the snugness of this, it's like I'd have really tiny stitches if I did that many. And 1/2 inch is too big. And I don't want to pull like a really arbitrary, and unfortunately the difficulty is I guess I can measure out with millimeters. That might be the easier way to go, even though I've marked these 1/4 inch apart. So I'm like, it almost might be easier to do millimeters with this. Because it's like basically the 1/4 inch would be too tight. I mean, are we? What am I doing? So, what might be best? Because I could do like 2 centimeters or 1 centimeter. 1 centimeter. Woo! So yeah, I could do 1 centimeter and it'd be slightly over 3/8. Let's convert some stuff real fast. This might be better in millimeters. Like, it doesn't matter that I'm doing 1/4 inch this way. That's just what looked right. All right, so. Round that up to 56. And then if I have 12 point. So 127. So slightly over, maybe like 2. See, as soon as I start doing that, things in my brain get a little weird. Oh, it's because I was doing 1/10 of an inch and I can't multiply by 1/10 of an inch. That's not how that works, Nicole. I was like, wait, I'm using inches somewhere in this. So if we've got 1.2 or 12.7 words. Wow. Okay, so I'd have to be doing this is why I don't, because like sometimes fractions are better. It makes it easier. Alright, so each one of these things takes up that. Oh, now my brain's just completely stopped conceptualizing of math. Wee. Okay, so 56. I don't know, do you guys have like a, like we got the little dashes for inches and feet. I don't know. Imperial makes sense for certain spacings. And if you just stick to either decimal or fraction, super easy. Super easy. This with having to always, it just, like it doesn't always work for everything. There are times, like inches was super easy for me to adjust this on. This is, for whatever reason, my brain is not, because it's like, each of these is 1/10 of an inch. Multiple by 10, done. Because it's the same stuff. It's just, yeah. So like that's the problem, is I end up with the decimal, so I can't just like reverse the. So that was divided by 1. So 12.7 divided by 0.254. Oh, so literally 50. Really? Oh, ugh, this is why my brain hurts, because it's going to be the same number of those. Why did I have to redo that math? See, that's what I'm making this harder than I should be, because it's going to be the same number of pleats either way. It doesn't matter if I'm in metric or imperial. It's going to be 50 gathers either way, and so I just need to figure out 50 gathers. I don't know why I did all that. 50 gathers into 56 centimeters, so slightly over a centimeter. So I'm pretty sure at this point I can just do a centimeter and call it good. That was, why did I do that? I just had to figure out that one number, and everything makes sense. Oh, forgot that was on, not on. People watching their neighbors sled down icy streets. Okay, the only difference is that I have to use this because I have plenty of metric based things. I just don't have a clear graph, like quilting ruler for that. So what that would end up being, that there, would be every centimeter, which is like not an insurmountable amount, but so. Oh, that's why that was going to be annoying, because I really need to. Wait. Let me check something. Maybe I do. Maybe I do. Where are my rulers? I was like, I swear I have a metric. Shoemaking. That's what happens in metric. So I do. It's a little wonky, but I can work with this. I can get used to whatever it is that I'm having to do here. So each one of those is half. So okay, cool. First one's just a little weird. We'll work it after that. So all right. I'm coming out from slightly the wrong angle. Yeah, and that's fine. You can use decimal-based system. That's the thing. Like, you don't have to go. So the reason why we use half-inch, quarter-inch, eighth of an inch, that stuff, is just because that's what's easy to visually divide in half and half and half. You can totally work with 1/10 and visualize that. It's no different. So you can do imperial the same way you do metric. There's no rules that say that you can't. It's just your rulers don't have those marks in them. But I work in fractions that the rulers don't show all of the time, like 1/10 or 2/3, because it just makes it easier. So you can choose whatever way you want to do things, whether you're doing it in fractions or you're doing it in decimals. It doesn't matter. You just stick to one. So you can say 0.5 or 0.8 or point whatever, and you just visualize what each little tenth would be. That's all it has to be. So it doesn't need to be as complicated as a lot of people seem to say it should be. At least in my opinion. Like, it doesn't need to be that complicated. Yeah, I go back and forth. I mean, most of the time, unless I am trying to be really specific on numbers, you just pick what you measure in, and you measure in that, and you call it good. Trying to work back and forth isn't even that difficult unless you're trying to be super precise. Calculators for that. Otherwise, it's like 2.5 rounded up. Like, that's really all it has to be. So, that's not too bad. I'm not going to do too many of these because I just feel... It feels weird because my brain thinks I should be doing quarters, and I'm not doing quarters. That's why it feels weird and wrong. Just deal with it, brain. Just deal with it. It feels like I'm doing slightly too fat of quarter. It's okay. We're good. That just looks... Alright, something was off with that. Whatever. It's fine. We'll adjust that. I was like, no, something is off. It's just not a problem off, it's just off. I can fix this. Gotcha. There we go. Something about the dots is just throwing me. I feel like I was raised on both sometimes. I don't know why, but I definitely remember using metric at some point. But I have a feeling it was probably more of her, like, sciencey stuff. Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, what's on the rulers like this is they divide it by 8 because it's just easier to visualize dividing in half, dividing in half, dividing in half. Like, that's why we use eighths rather than tenths. But you don't have to. Like I said, I divide into thirds a lot because so much shoemaking and so much, like, tailor drafting stuff, they'll do thirds a lot. And that's purely because, used to be, you took measurements on a paper tape, and then you'd fold them to do divisions. There were no numbers involved. So you divide things in half, or you divide things into thirds. And you go from there. So a lot of old tailoring manuals still do a lot of things in thirds, especially since the body kind of gets divided into thirds with a lot of early tailoring. So if you say, look at 18th century men's coats, the back panels are 1/3 width. And the front panels are each 1/3 of the body. So I got used to, like, because I had to learn all that stuff, I'm used to working in thirds, which is never marked on any of, no matter what system you're using. You don't normally see thirds marked. And if you're dealing with big full body measurements, it takes a lot of math to deal with thirds and half of thirds and da-da-da-da-da if you're doing metric on, like, a larger scale. So it's just easy. Yeah, they start putting out all these tailor squares, which I find to be the stupidest things because it's just a way to market you to have to buy something that's not necessary. Because it just does it for you. I'm like, well, that's not needed. I don't want that. So. Okay, why am I having problems with this? So. Anyways, I don't know what I was doing. It's fine. We're fine. It's all fine. Fine and dandy. I'm gonna regret something on this, but it's okay, because it's cheap fabric, so it can only regret so much. Ooh, spike eggnog. Well, I mean, that's just eggnog, I thought. That's the way eggnog's supposed to be. That's how it stays for as long as it does. Otherwise, it's going to go bad really fast. Even in the fridge. We have a bunch of eggs to do that here. I have not yet been inclined to. Okay, let's try it this way. I'm either going to run out of things or run out of... Okay. Yeah, that'll work. So I saw that they are, for some slightly horrifying, but also I'm interested reason, they're doing a That 90s show, which it's only terrifying when I realized that when I was watching That 70s show in the 1990s, that would have been, 20 years prior, and now it's 20 years prior, and I was like, wow, nothing's made me feel old in a very long time. Also, now I'm picturing what a That 2000 and Teens show would be like, and wow, that is a very depressing concept. Eggnog is very creamy. I mean, eggs in the name for a reason. Um, it's got a fair number of spices in it. It's I'm trying to think of like a similar, I don't know, to me it always tastes like the sort of cream, like a spiced cream that you would expect in like a pastry. Sort of that sort of cream. It's not that thick. It's like a very drinkable, like milkshakey sort of, like a little on the thicker cream side. But it is in that range of kind of flavored akin to a pastry cream. And usually, not always, but like the good stuff has a lot of rum in it, to the point where it will just be good in your fridge for a long time, or even shelf stable for quite a while. It's pretty hearty. Put it that way. You can make it as alcoholic or not as you would like. Um, we definitely do mulled wine and things like that here too. That's been part of my, I don't know, adult experience. I don't know how common it is outside of my very weird group of people that I know, but I prefer the spiced wine, like mulled wine, glühwein, all those different things. I prefer that just because I feel like I can sit down and just drink that, and it's kind of like juice versus eggnog. I feel like I am drinking dessert. Like it is a lot for me. Oh no. So we have the stuff to do that. Like we have a packet of spaces to heat up this weekend. So this is a problem. I'm like, I don't know what's normal holiday things for most people, because I not only grew up in a weird house, but I also have weird friends. So what the thing that occurs when you get to be an adult and you're like, what's normal? And you go out into the world and you do things to your friends, and like I developed a whole nother set of things that I'm pretty sure are not normal. You returned from the grocery store? Wow. Ooh, saffron. Oh, I didn't know that was a thing. I don't think I have any saffron around. I'm gonna put that on my list for like next week. We have to look this up. That sounds like a very interesting concept to me. It makes perfect sense. I mean, all the saffron buns. Saffron bun. I miss those things. Abby and I talk about that. We're like, the only thing that we miss from her ex-husband is all the Swedish stuff. It sounds like I got to have one proper Swedish style Christmas when I lived in Williamsburg. There's just enough overlap of still having Swedish family out to visit at Abby's, and Abby and I not being mortal enemies, that we overlapped and had a brilliant, very Swedish Christmas. I just remember burping up dill for so long afterwards. So much. We have pot pies to heat up tonight. So there's a place in town that makes amazing American biscuits. I always have to specify that. And they also do pot pies, apparently, as we've recently discovered. So we've started getting a biscuit thing, sandwich from them, and then picking up the pot pies, putting them in the fridge, and then reheating them at dinner. So, oh my God. Interesting. I'll have to look for that at some point, too. Fortunately, I don't find myself usually over in Europe during the holidays, but I really want to. Like, that is now on my high list to do, because I keep, for whatever reason, TikTok has decided I should see all of the German Christmas traditional stuff, and I am really like, oh no, now I really want to go. I'm like, oh man, so like Maybe that becomes the thing. I just need to start going. Some of them are going to be cold, but I just need to start going to European countries for the holidays. Which I've been to the UK and France and Italy around that time. I spent New Year's in Monaco when I was younger, like in high school we were on a school trip. So we went through, we got there right after Christmas, started at Paris, went down to Monaco, and then down on to Milan, and how far did we make it? I don't remember. But yes. Yeah, I have thankfully, know people in the Munich area, so, which is, if you want to feel like we think of very, German, traditional Oktoberfest and all of that, it's so quaint. And but I do, not surprisingly, really want to go to Romberg or Butaber, for, anywhere near the holiday season, because it's already, half Christmas there all the time. They just have Christmas shops all year round, so, how crazy must that place be? And that is a pretty easy drive or train trip, from Munich, so, for a day. So I'm yeah, that makes sense. Baden-Württemberg is basically Lancaster County. Totally. Yes. And the humor there is that that's where a good chunk of my family came from and then moved to. Huge chunk of my family. I can trace to both of those things. So, and it looks the same. The first time I was in Germany, I flew into Berlin and then we took a train and did kind of a loop. And as we got closer to the Munich region, I was just I can see how everyone ended up in Pennsylvania through to Indiana. That's what this looks like. We're just transitioning between that area, that line right there. You start off in Pennsylvania, be familiar, get all the way to Indiana, it'd still be familiar, just different types, but it's all in that range. I'm yep, that is totally, I can see now, Indiana less so as much now, just because it's been, taken over by so much farmland, but when it still had all of its trees and some of the more hilly regions or whatever. My stomach is grumbly today. Yep, I can see it. I totally see it. So, I find that highly amusing. The familiarity. I can see why my family ended up where they did. It would have looked dramatically different when they first got there, because they were the ones that cleared all the land for the farms. Oh, so many Christmas markets. Yeah, I just want to go to all the Christmas markets, and I want to see all the Krampus stuff, and all of the, all of the more Yule type stuff. It looks, we don't do that here, and because there's so many freaking things are oh, nope, that's too pagan, that's too whatever, Christianity no, we need to be more traditional about it. Not that everything isn't already, basically just dulled down Yule. Whatever. I think part of it's because I feel like Christmas has been so commercialized in so many ways, and it's just kind of stopped being what I feel like it should be. And when I see all of the videos and different things of what it is like in places like Germany, I'm oh man, that looks like what I think it should be. That's much closer. It feels like I can go buy things from small stalls in the market rather than big corporations and all of that. Mm-hmm. Leaving electric candles in the windows is a problem to some people. Sorry, it seems to be lagging on my, it's telling me that there's lag. I don't know quite what to do about that. I'm confused by that because that's always been part of, I grew up, we had that. It shouldn't be laggy because there's nothing else happening right now. I don't know why it's doing that. It's annoying. Because I keep seeing it lag way down and then it jumps way back up. But I don't know why that would be a problem. Like, that unlocked a memory for me of always having candles, like, in the windows, and then that was just, like, a normal thing in Williamsburg, too. Because, most of the Christmas decor and things like that we put up is very modern. But candles in the window is something that's a little bit older of a concept, so it was one of the few things we kind of did around the historic area that actually felt like we're supposed to do it. Oh, leaving Christmas decorations out too long? Jeez. They're gonna have a hard time in the coming years. I don't know if you guys have come across the permanent Christmas lights trend, but that seems to be taking hold. I think the only limitation on it is going to be, aside from obviously the fact that it is somewhat expensive, the fact that it's going to be hard to get a hold of them for so long. So I'm definitely all for the idea of the permanent Christmas lights, which are just LED strips you put outside, because then you change colors and patterns depending on the holidays. So suddenly year round, you've just got pretty lights. I don't know. I'm all for house lights of any type year round, to be honest, aside from the really bright, like, obnoxious ones, like ones that are meant to be decorative and pretty. I am all for that year round. Why not? If it's dark out, could always use a little bit more sparkling light in our life, huh? Okay. We're getting there. There's a bit of a grid going. So. Oh, I can't really grid with this. Alright, so I've got far enough that I've got one full set. I know that there's just as much over there, but, like, you also have stuff that is not commercialized as much. That's all. Like, I know that there's plenty of commercial stuff over the, like I said, I've been to Rotenburg. It's very commercialized, and I totally accept that is just part of it, but there's nothing but that here. Like, there are, unless you live in rather artistic, cultural, crafty cities, like, which are very few and far between, like, I can't remember the last time I got to do anything for Christmas that wasn't a giant, like, there's stuff that churches do, but that's super religious. I don't know of any sort of Christmas parades anywhere that I've ever lived, aside from, like, Macy's Day Thanksgiving, and Disney does a Christmas parade, like, the televised ones. Like, I don't, the most you get is, like, the local park sometimes does we put up lights, do you want to pay us $5 and drive through the lights? That's, like, or I don't know, that's it. I think, like, and I know that I'm seeing a very limited window, but even just the idea of people setting up individual stalls for, like, farmers market type thing, but for holidays, like, and there are occasionally ones like that around here, but because we don't have city centers, we're just physically not set up for things like that. They happen in random church parking lots, and you have to drive by that church or know to look it up. Like, there is no way for me to know that there's anything going on in town. We don't have a central thing occurring here, like, at all. Like, there, in small places, like when I lived in Williamsburg, like, you knew that most of the stuff was going to happen on one street in town, because that, like, was one of the ones they could close off. But, like, here in Reno, like, there is no way to predict anything like that. There is no single website or anything that I can go to that has a consistent list of what's going on in town. There's nothing. Like, I'm sure that there's a Santa crawl. You don't want to go to that because it's just a whole bunch of drunk people, like, walking around in the worst area of downtown, which is where all of the, like, casinos are. It's not fun. It's not pretty. It's just a whole lot of, like, they literally, we have actual paddy wagons. I don't know if there's another word for those, but like literally the vans that are just meant to arrest multiple people at once, those just sit there whenever we do the holiday things like that. Like, that's all we got. Like, there's just nothing here. Like I said, Williamsburg there was, but that was because it was full of retired people, and therefore money, and therefore lots of artists. Because it was like a college town. You know, there's a university there and a whole lot of rich old people. So, yeah, but not... In most of the places I've lived, there's, like, nothing that's done. Because there's not, like, a safe, centralized place to do it in town. There is no such thing as a city center. There is no such thing as the town square. Anything that's been built, anything that wasn't established by, like, 1850, there is no such thing as a center of town. So, like, there are things, but they tend to either be in the really big cities, where you have a neighborhood that sets up, or they tend to be in the affluent, but relatively small, more artsy places. So, like, if the sort of place where you could walk along and see a whole bunch of shops owned by local people for, like, selling art-based things that are there year-round, then yeah, they'll have some sort of holiday celebration. We have nothing like that here. At all, and a lot of places that I live don't have that. So, just things that were built up as more recent city build-ups, especially big expansions in the 50s and 60s, it's sprawling. There's no central thing. It's meant to just sprawl, and then you just get... And, like, yeah, San Diego, like, this is the thing, like, I've definitely noticed in California and a lot of cities like that, they have big neighborhood things. That just doesn't happen other places that I've discovered in the same way. Like, I remember it happening in Naperville. I grew up in a place just outside of Chicago when I was younger, and I remember stuff happening there, but there's a lot of art stuff there. They did art fairs and all those sorts of things. And in Williamsburg, but again, those are both relatively affluent, artsy or university or whatever sort of places, versus when I lived in Muncie, Indiana. Now when I lived in Omaha, they might have done some things downtown, but it was, again, mostly just sprawling suburbs, so there wasn't anything near me. And I don't remember anything in any of the places I lived around DC. We'd always just go into DC for things. I don't know. Point is, the American suburb sucks. That's the point of this. The suburbia that is the American country, it's not fun. Don't recommend. 0 stars. It works if it's just built and everybody moves in, and everybody that moves in at about the same time with about the same age and same family. Like, I was fortunate enough that where I grew up near Chicago, like, the suburb we were in was very much a lot of people my age, so it's just tons of kids packed into one little neighborhood. So we did things. But as the kids got older and started moving out, then they stopped doing things. So. Okay, so how am I going to do this? These are going to be the high points in the middle. So, high point. Two. There's a little more like there. I'm just going to draw. I don't know. It's just getting weird. Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It's, I don't know. Like I said, it's more the fact that, like, it is so inconsistent, and so you just don't realize how much or how little. And, like, there's more awareness of it now with things like when you go to look at houses, they'll give you recommendations like the walkability scale of what you're looking at, but that's not enough. It really doesn't tell you, are there art fairs here or something? So, like, there's Something missing. So yeah, just, I don't know. I think I expected there to be more. I was explained to that there was more in the city, and there just isn't. Or at the very least, it's just really inconvenient to get to it. So, I don't know. Another line. Yeah, that's the confusing point that I'm at, I think. I'm just like, I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot missing. I've lived in just enough good places that I really notice the fact that I'm missing a lot of the stuff that I wish I was around. Outdoor market stuff. That sort of thing. Just anything to do that isn't just a casino or a comedian. Art fest, yeah. Sometimes art fests are great, sometimes they're not very exciting. I suppose in reality I just need to grid this whole thing and then gather it appropriately, because it's less a matter of where I'm actually going to put those things and more a matter of, man, I was hoping to get away with doing less. No, it's not how that's gonna work. Okay, so that's center point to dirt, and then over there, deep over there, deep over there, two up. We'll see. I live near a theme park. I feel like I don't want to be like, I miss Williamsburg, yeah, but like the more time I spend away from there, more like, man, I don't think I realized how good I had it there. Like, I ended up somehow in what was an ideal city situation in that area for me, because you have like all the benefits of it being a tourist place and Busch Gardens right there and everything, without nearly all the detriment of it, because I was near, it's not like living in Orlando or something awful. You know, there's tourists, but not on the level of that sort of thing. So, like, you had all the good food because they were wealthy people and tourists, but not. And I know it's changed. Like, every time I go back, there's stuff built up that shouldn't. It just, yeah. So it's not always going to be, like, ideal. But, like, you know, there's a farmer's market every Saturday, most of the year. Sort of thing. Or not every Saturday. There was every Saturday. Yeah. No. I worked on Saturdays. I was like, wait, no, it was on the day that I worked. That's right. I didn't do real weekends for a long time. Yeah. But there was a train station, and that train was the main train that went up the East Coast, and it starts pretty much in Williamsburg. Like, I think it technically might go down to Newport News or something. But basically, you could pick up the train in the morning, and you could take the train all the way up to at least Boston. I don't know if it kept going past there, because I never really went further than that, but I've taken the train between Boston and Williamsburg. And it's easy to get to Richmond, and there's museums and things in Richmond. There's all the artsy stuff in Williamsburg. But, you know, like, that area was just nice. Like, I wouldn't mind living in Richmond. But maybe at some point. We'll see. That, there. Right. Now this is mostly just allowing me to figure out how many rows I need. I do, in some ways, though, miss living near enough to a theme park that I could occasionally just go ride roller coasters and scream all of my feelings out. Like, it's been a rough week. Let's go yell. culturally acceptable manner. Like, it's a really silly thought when you think like that way, but that was so true. Like, you're not always situationally in a place where you can just like let it out and just scream really loud. But like, man, you can totally do that on theme park rides. So counts for something, right? Come back to Virginia. I would like to. I might. It's not the easiest thing to just move across the country, especially with the fact that it is not a good time to sell or buy houses right now. Like, value is down and interest rates are up. Whee! It's like what I'm hoping is that it'll balance out a little bit and that where I currently live won't see quite as much damage to prices as other places have seen. I don't think our inflation was quite as completely fake. I don't know better way to put it, but like at a lot of places, the value went up because there were a whole bunch of investment firms and things like that buying, and it just like that can't be sustained at all. That is less the case here. While there was a little bit of that, from what I could see, that wasn't the big issue here. The big issue was people from California moving here and buying everything in all cash because they had all cash from their houses. But they actually live in those houses, so... Well, that's no fun. I say it took me a long time to actually get to like roller coasters even, but once I did, I was like, oh no, this is okay. I'm okay with this. I don't want to draw these too much because at that point where I'd rather just draw. I feel like this is a small enough amount that I could just do more localized gathers. Because at some point it's just going to be a problem to have all of that. I guess it'll go back up there. But yeah, all of that space that I'd be gathering for stuff that isn't actually going to be. Let's just get rid of some of that. Let's do that. Okay. Okay, cool. Cool. That should work. Yeah. Every time they try, they end up with another bedroom. Every time they try to downsize. That's a vibe. Yeah. Like, my house is worth a fair amount itself. It's not worth nearly as much as it was a year ago. The value has dropped out from under it to some extent, but it could be worse. It's not too bad. Like, I expect a seasonal drop anyway. It's not too much more than I would expect for the fact that the market's flopped and all that. Like, it's fine. Oof. Yeah, I don't like the free fall ones. I like roller coasters, but yeah, I can definitely see how that would not always do well. Like, I do get dizziness, but I tend to get dizziness from head movements, like looking a bunch of different ways really fast rather than body movements. As long as because I can, I can see where I'm going, and therefore my head's okay with that. And I think this is just a matter of all the dance stuff that I did when I was younger and just getting used to spinning and body movement to avoid dizziness. I liked being, like, I was fine being dizzy as a kid. I forced myself to be dizzy a lot as a kid. So I think it's less the fact that I don't get dizzy and more just I'm okay with it. when it comes to that sort of thing. Well, if anything, that gives me way too many signs of, like, impending health problems with the fact that, like, the first time I ever had a major, like, joint type issue, it was one of, like, sitting in an office chair like this, and I was spinning myself super fast, and it fell over. And they think in the process I hit my ankle or something, and da-da-da. What I think now happened is I just tried to brace myself as I fell and hit my ankle just wrong and rolled it. And so at a pretty young age, started my, love affair with, just started going to the doctor an awful lot for twisted, dislocated, whateverness. Looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that was probably a sign. Oh man. Wooden roller coasters. I mean, they're not always upright, but yes, you generally won't go upside down. I mean, there's plenty of roller coasters that don't take you upside down. I don't know why my stomach is so loud. I'm not hungry. I'm gonna blame it on all the pie that I ate. Crumble, crumble, crumble. But, I don't get too bothered by going upside down, at least. But I can totally see why some people would. Stomach, gosh. It was a Earl Grey pie with a cherry walnut drizzle. Very good. I'm not, like, I'm more cake than pie person. If given a choice, but, like, it was like a custard pie. Like, and those I will, very much choose. Those I do find important. Yeah. I went to the doctor the first time for one of my kneecap dislocated, and the second time just already had the thing to wear. Yeah. Same thing with all of my, like, shoulder and arm things. Broke my arm once, had really good sling. I don't even want to know how many times I end up having to use that thing for other purposes. So I'm like, yeah, I remember doing that a lot. I know it doesn't look like much, but we're getting there. This is just one of many that I have to do, though, so this is not the most exciting, but I have to do it, whether it's fun or not. It's not important. Oh yeah, mine always just popped right back into place. It was just all of the inflammation and pain afterwards that was the problem. Because, like, the only reason I even knew that I did it the first time was the fact that I literally watched it happen. And I was like, oh, that's not good. And then I went and sat on a plane for, like, 3 hours after that. And, even though I was a kid, was pretty stiff when I got up and very displeased by the whole thing. And my dad was like, "You're fine." And I was like, I don't think she's fine. My dad was very much the stop acting that way for attention. I'm like, all right, you may have been that kid. I am not that kid. Like, things that you can look back as an adult and be like, oh, you were totally the kid that felt like they weren't getting enough attention, so you did things to... I see why you thought I did those things. Yeah, no, that's on you. You need to go to a therapist for that. That's a you problem. I don't do that. I don't want attention. I just want to be left alone. Yeah, well, the second time I did it, it wasn't a big deal. I was like, ah, shoot, I think I did that. That was really the first one that was a noticeable dislocation. That was like, oh, no. Because I was getting onto a plane as a small child. Smallish. Mid-sized. I don't know, I think 6th grade. 11. And I thought all of the arms were up. And I think what happened is as my dad went across, he bumped one and it fell down. And I was pushing my bag across and... on top of the seat, and I was kind of pushing with my knee, and as it hit the armrest, I felt that hit, but my knee was moving just too close to the edge, and so it took the kneecap, and I kept moving. So that's what I was like, I know what happened, but otherwise, it was just the fact that I did that, and then didn't, walk it out, as it were, afterwards, that I sat down for 3 hours, and basically, plane wasn't moving. That added up to it being a problem. Because I definitely did stuff like that, not uncommonly as a kid. Just was really noticeable that time, and then never quite got it back to the way it was. Yeah, I honestly couldn't even begin to tell you how many times I probably have dislocated things and not noticed. Because there were so many times where I was like, oh, wow, I just rolled my ankle so far, that shouldn't be normal. Or natural, or okay, but, it's a little tight. It'll be fine. Spoiler alert, it's really not fine. It's really not fine. Right, so this is the row that we're aiming for. Somewhere over here. I honestly don't even know what it... that's the thing, I know I visibly saw it happen. It didn't feel like it happened. And so I do sit here and wonder, how many times have I done stuff like that and not realized it? As I rolled and sprained ankles and wrists so much when I was a kid. Ankles were a constant problem for me. I'm like, was it that, or was it just, absurd levels of things that shouldn't happen that my body reacted accordingly by going, don't do that again. Oh, yeah, I shouldn't. I do have noticed lately I can't actually put direct weight on my wrists anymore. I built up so much strength in these when I was doing aerial dance stuff. And it's still there. I don't feel like I've lost muscle tone. There's something recently that was like, can you do this thing? And I tried to do it, and because I was putting all of my weight onto my 2 palms, the pain in my wrist was like, nope. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's just never gonna work again. And it didn't matter if it was on a padded surface or something, it's just having all of that weight there is that's never gonna be okay again. And other issues like that. Okay. Fun times. Not had by all. Okay, that's as far as I can go with that. Probably did not need to mark those, but whatever. One section. I have another one mostly done with those rows. I just haven't done the vertical ones. Oof. Oh, coughing fits. I definitely did something to one of my ribs, bruised it, something during an illness I got. Oh, what year was that? 2014? Where I got a particularly bad flu, and that turned into pneumonia, and so much coughing, bruised or dislocated something. And the only thing that kept it from being so painful I couldn't function were my stays. Because with bruised ribs, at the very least, having slight, just gentle hug compression helps. Like, that's one of the ways that they like to help with a bruised rib or something. Like, you will wrap sometimes. So I wore my stays. Like, I didn't wear my stays the first day, and it was awful. And I wore my stays to work the second day, and it was like, oh, I'm fine now. So, like, I am a convert to that concept. That's for sure. So, I don't know as much with dislocations, if that's a recommended thing, but it was like, not my doctor, but like doctor recommended, like the pressure thing was something that I was finding as recommended, but they're like, but it's kind of difficult to find a way to, broadly and consistently apply without reducing the ability to breathe and da-da-da. I was like, I have a way. I have the perfect way to do that. So, thought that was very amusing. Oof. More sarcastic than usual. Oh no. I think everyone that's probably still awake, therefore on here right now, is probably also the same boat of slightly more cold, slightly more tired than you should be. So. I'm like, definitely feeling that today. I'm not more cold. I mean, I did wake up more cold, so I put on one of my warm sweaters. And it's not even more cold here. I just felt more cold, so I was like, nope, I need my sweater. I need my warm sweater. Oh, I didn't mark those out. Whoops. Ooh. Oh. I've started popping mine within the last, year, and it's freaking people out. Because it's like, I can tell if I'm getting too stressed, I start to curl in more, or I sit like this for too long, and then I will be like, all right, I need to chest open to release the tension, because I am holding way too much tension here, and I do that, and my breastbone pops, and it freaks out. They're like, what was that? Or like, you don't want to know. Cartilage, just don't ask. It's okay, it's not broken. Oh yeah, I forgot. We are now late enough in the day here that it would be Australia would be awake. Yeah, it would be more. I have a friend who just moved to New Zealand. I think early on this year. And so she's dealing with her first. She had lived on the East Coast previously, so she's dealing with her first not cold Christmas. She's like there's a lot of fun things. It's just really weird. Just a whole lot of no going on right now in terms of temperature. Whew. Is that what that feeling is sometimes? When you can't breathe because of... Is that what that is? Because I definitely have had that before. Lately it's just been, general tension getting there, but, suddenly I can breathe again. oh no, am I putting it back into place rather than... Because I was talking to someone about it, they're like, yeah, I used to be able to do that when I was wrestling in high school. That's not normal. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what it's doing. All I know is that there's so much tension across here, I feel like I can no longer function or breathe. And then I pop it, and then I'm fine. My muscles relax. That's okay, right? That's not a big deal. Oh, man. Okay, yeah, we're good. So I have, just because we need, my doctor's the, very much seems to be the, well, let's rule all the obvious things out first. I'm just going to assume that she doesn't know much about EDS or POS or all that stuff, but I've got endocrinologist next week and ENT the week after. And so we'll see what happens, if anything, with those, which is valid. Like, I want to make sure that there's not other stuff happening, because it could be all of the above. So, yeah. Oof. Hinges backwards. I don't... C2 and 3. I'll have to look that up, because I'm like, I don't even know. I don't know. Like, my back has already freaked enough medical professionals out. So when I was in college, I started having major lower back pain. And so I went into the doctor about that, because, it was just down the street. And they did all the scans and all the whatnots and lower vertebrae that moves when it's not supposed to. And basically they all thought that it was so bad, it was so dislocated, and that sort of thing, that I was either going to be, I had either no core strength and therefore was not able to hold my back into place, or I had been in some sort of car accident or some sort of traumatic thing. And I was like, never been in a car accident or had any, like, bodily trauma of any type. The most traumatic thing that's ever occurred to me, back-wise, was somebody pulled a chair out from underneath me when I was a kid. I think that broke my tailbone, but I don't think that caused all my back problems. And, yeah, I, had core strength, from years and years of dance, so that wasn't the issue either. They gave me all this stuff to do for physical therapy, and within the first couple weeks, they had to put me on, the highest advanced level, and were like, yeah, you shouldn't actually need to be doing this. I'm like, welcome to my problems. So, now I get it. Yeah, we're sitting at around, I think, the same. Our high currently is sitting at around in the 40s and 50s, so far enough above freezing that it's comfortable still, since it's not damp or anything. We're supposed to get a fair amount of precipitation next week from the looks of it. But obviously, that's where I am. You go just a smidge into the mountains, it's just covered in snow, and will not stop being covered in snow, because everyone just goes there to ski. It's fine. It's much colder there. I don't like that curve. I'm going to adjust that curve. Where I draw a whole bunch of these lines. Okay. That's better. Cool. I haven't done skiing forever, man. Ooh, egg allergies. Oh, man. That sucks. That's in a lot of things. I did a lot of cross-country skiing when I was younger. That was typical. We lived, like I said, near Chicago, so plenty of snow, but not exactly, mountainous terrain. So we did a lot of cross-country skiing. I think I went downhill skiing, once or twice. But I do like cross-country skiing still. Yeah, at least here when it's warmer, it's just dry here. Like, if it's not snowing this time of year, it's usually just dry. Because even if it's well above freezing where I am, it stops being above freezing real fast as you go up into the atmosphere, and so it can snow even when it's way above freezing here. It won't stick for very long, but it can snow. We live in a bowl, which means that the weather here tries to kill me on a daily basis because the pressure changes are absurd. This is the last time that I went skiing. Age like 11, 12? Probably. I can't remember doing it after when I'm like probably age 12 after I left. Well, no, it wouldn't have been. It would have been age 11. Would have been the last winter I spent in Chicago. So that was probably the last time I did. It's been a while. Like, and we used to do enough cross-country skiing. Like, I had, it was at our local park, so I had all the equipment. Didn't, like, rent stuff or go somewhere for it. It just was a thing. Like, we just went to the park that was just down the street from our house and went on the trails. I bet I could here if it snowed enough, but it doesn't usually snow enough at the altitude that I'm at. I'd have to go up into the mountains to do so, and then that's a whole different type of skiing up there. It's like I have a lot of land around me that's meant for hiking and other stuff, but that's mostly just covered in brush and doesn't have enough snow, like usually more than a couple inches, and it melts really fast. Like, we can get a lot of snow here, but it doesn't stick around very often. Oh, neat. Horse strong gear, that's cool. Look at this whole working on light color so I can actually do it after the sun sets. Like, I know it just looks peachy to you guys. It's off-white in real life. But I can adjust that up slightly. A little better. So, just drawing lines and lines and lines. And you guys are keeping me company. That way I am not nearly as bored. I meant to post something on Instagram today. I have not even been on Instagram today. Too many other things. Oh, I need to respond to messages too. Shoot. I just kind of like shut off last night and was like, I'm not dealing with anything today. I'm just doing this all day. Around here, our nature reserve that's right up against, not my house, but like just across the street. They low fly helicopters over it a couple times a year to get rid of mosquitoes. Not that we really have that many here, but I'm sure that's why. It's like one of the only little sitting natural bodies of water that we get. Just over here like, why are you flying a helicopter back and forth for like 2 hours straight, Tuesday morning at like 7 o'clock? What is this? So mad last time. I was like, well, I was going to film today. Guess I'm not doing that now. Just watching go back and forth. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. How many more did I say that I needed to do past that? Maybe like 4 or 5. Okay. I can do them. I also miss horses, man. I used to do so many fun things when I was younger. I don't get to do any of those things anymore. I had like all of the hobbies as a kid, which is like great. My parents were like, yeah, just keep trying things. Like, you don't have to stick with things. If you really don't like something, you don't have to stick with it. Like, they wouldn't encourage me to just be like, I don't feel like doing this anymore. But it was one of those, you have to try everything once. You don't have to stick with it. You've got enough things you're good at and enjoy. But I did horseback riding and ice skating and skiing and did rollerblading for a few years because it was the 90s. And it was pretty similar to ice skating. I forgot this is easy to learn. Yeah. I also lived in a place that had access to a lot of those sorts of things. Like, there were just a lot of classes intended for kids that were done through the community, so they weren't super expensive. They were all kind of run by the same... A lot of them were run by the same group. So essentially you'd, I think, pay for like an annual community membership or something for the entire household. It was a very small amount to stick your kids into one of like 50 different things. Like, there were so many different classes that I took as a kid through at the same community center. What I didn't know was that that was not normal. Being able to be like, oh yeah, no, I took a French class 1 year, and then the next semester I took a class on how to do like hand-drawn animation, and then I did this class over here on robotics, and then I did this class on something to do with computer stuff, because like computers are relatively new. Like, the horseback riding, the ice skating, dance classes, I think were all separate, their own things, but I did like a variety of just a couple of year little, community classes, which were specifically aimed at making sure that all the kids in the community had access to that sort of thing. So, yeah. I lived in a nice city when I was growing up, younger years. I don't begrudge the fact that I moved and had different experiences, but yeah, dramatically different experiences after I moved. Especially since I was going back and forth between 2 different places, and they were dramatically different places. So my summer experiences were very different than what I could do during the year. A lot of summer camps. Awesome. Seems about right. Okay. So just a big, daunting mess at this point. Just like, Yes, that's the correct. That's down there, and that's probably there. Okay. think about it, I'm like, all those weird things I did as a kid definitely have helped me in all of the weird things I do as an adult, but so I'm like glad I got to do all those things, but at the same time, like, it might have been better for me in some ways to focus on like one thing for a while. Think about them like, man, if I had just kept up with just violin or piano or gymnastics or horse riding or any one of those things, if I had just done the specific, like, I kept up with art, but that just, widely generically useful as a skill in reality. Tea time. I need to go get more tea or more water or something. You are right. I should bring my electric kettle up here. My little one. Transportable one. That's what I need to get myself another kettle. Keep promising myself that. Brain needs to do all things, yeah. As I sit here trying to teach myself another skill, I'm gonna go grab liquids. Because you are right, I do need to keep drinking liquids. I will be right back. Too much. There we go. All right. I have made tea. Or it is making tea. Oof. like, I was definitely encouraged to not just, like, do something and for, like, a couple years and then let it go. Like, if you want to quit, you can quit, but, like, you need to consider it and we need to talk about it. Sort of thing. So I was like, I never told that I had to do things I didn't want to. It was more just the, why don't you want to? We need to talk about that. Understand. You know, so, like, I quit doing violin, which I kind of still regret, but it's okay. That was one of the few things I look back and like, that would have, I'm not going to say useful to keep doing. I think I would have enjoyed knowing how to do that as an adult. If that makes sense. I do want to pick my ukulele back up and do more with that. I did lessons on that for like a solid year. Actually, it's probably closer to 2 years when I was in Williamsburg, actually. Then I moved. And I didn't really find a new person to teach me, and I didn't really keep up with doing it, you know. Life. I'll do it backwards, it's fine. Life kind of got in the way, and I did other things. Thankfully, most of my, like, physical things that I did over the years have not been too damaging. Like, dance definitely could have been. And the different formats of dance that I did, I think some would have been if I had stuck with them. But I accidentally found myself as, you know, an adult doing all of the pole and aerial fitness, which I think is probably the as I have found for my body, one of the better options. Because it's a combination of cardio, strength, and movement-based things that the place that I went to was very high emphasis on making sure you didn't injure yourself. So warm-ups and cool-downs are extremely important. Making sure that you weren't doing things that your body was not ready to do. And like I haven't gone to other pole places much, but I know other people from that group that did, and they're like, oh yeah, they were trying to have us do this stuff and this stuff way earlier, or we were allowed to do that stuff way earlier, people that were doing stuff at home that they shouldn't have been. Like, I was very fortunate to have a teacher that was very low, slow, and controlled, and that you should never do something that your body is not 100% ready for. So it's not ready to drink yet. That's still way too hot. Which was good. Like, I built up a lot of strength in every single aspect of my body, which is really hard to do if you're, like, lifting or whatever. Like, it's hard to get your body to build muscle that evenly. So that was definitely good, but it was low to no impact and all of that. Rifle through your cabbage patch looking for large pieces. Oh. Yeah. Piece it. Piece it. I will always tell people that. That's one of the only things that I thoroughly carry over from one of my weird jobs and less pleasant boss experiences. One of the things that I fully 100% agree with her with. Piece all the things. Unless you're in a rush, then maybe don't, like, it's a lot of time. Okay. See if I can keep this relatively similar, since I'm trying to make it somewhat symmetrical. Like, I know it's not going to be perfect, but as best I can on that. Anything interesting in the... Oh. Everyone's just talking about sledding. Okay, good. No one's died. No one's stuck in their house without food. Well, maybe, but not any of these people. I do know at least one person who probably is, but I don't talk to her that much, so... racing for the win. Especially when it's not in a really obvious area. Or if it's historical, screw it. Doesn't matter how obvious it is. Peace everything. It is quite dark outside now. It just feels like the sunset isn't just early, it just happens fast. Like, boom, it's gone. No warning. Like, at the very least, we're a few days past the point where the nighttime starts getting later. It's just that the morning's gonna continue. It's just not catching up anymore. So our days are technically getting longer, even though our mornings won't be brighter for a while. Before you know it, it'll be light at like 9 o'clock at night and we'll all hate it. I'm just suffering through the fact that, like, this is the worst time of year for me to do any projects, because filming wise, there's so little of the day where the sun is remotely the same. So shortest birthday there is. So it's like, thankfully with this is very repetitive, so I'm able to do a huge chunk of this not on camera, because no one needs to see like an hour of me just doing this. It really doesn't get interesting for a while, and I just need to capture enough of what I'm doing at some point for a video, but I definitely don't need the whole thing. No one needs to watch all of this. Cousin's birthday is around this time of year. I don't remember what day she's born on, though. I know a ton of people born in January, and then nearly everyone else I know is born in April. It's like I've got January and April, and I've got like 2 people outside of that, and that's like it. But as of right now, at least, all of the people that I have are in that range of people you buy birthday gifts for. I probably should send something. I think I'm just gonna send New Year's. Big New Year's whatever thing. But yeah, like, everybody's January or April. Makes it easy to remember, at least. Still too hot. And I know it's too hot because the light can show me that it's too hot. I could even look up on my phone exactly what temperature it is. But no, we'll just burn my tongue instead. That sounds like a great idea. I feel like, ooh, there it is. I was like, I feel like my ankle really needs to pop. It does. Hooray. Much better. I have been sitting at this table way too much today. But as this part needs to be done flat, I don't really have another place I can do it. When I actually get to doing all the stitching, I can take it with me elsewhere. Sit down, more comfortable places, but not so much at the moment. You have friends that hate getting gifts? Yeah. I mean, there are lots of people that really prefer like time spent together or experiences or actions or things like that over stuff. I try to do that with my mom more now because she's so hard to buy for, and I've just decided this year I'm getting her an experience instead. We're just going to take a trip because she usually plans trips, but we haven't done a trip together in a long time. And there's something she's been talking about. So what I'm going to do is like a choose your own adventure because I don't know precisely interesting fact, because I don't know precisely what aspects of the trip she would find important. So I'm going to do like a choose your own adventure where I'm going to basically put out all the timetables and all of the options, and then we can decide exactly what days we want to do what things and which places we want to stop and da-da-da. So it can be like, I will buy the thing, which is less important, but it's like I'll buy the thing and plan the thing to some extent, but I want her input on some of it. Otherwise, I would have already probably chosen things that she wouldn't have wanted. So, so it's going to be a choose your own adventure. Whereas essentially, I am not pre-buying these things because, like, the thing that I know that she wants to do is there is a really beautiful train ride that you can take on the West Coast. It starts all the way down in San Diego and goes all the way up to Seattle. And it's really beautiful. And I was looking into that and like doing some other connection things to get to it. But I didn't realize she wanted to do the southern portion too, rather than just stop in Sacramento and literally hop, skip, and a jump train ride back to Reno. She wants to go all the way down to San Diego because she wants to see Napa Valley and all that. So I was like, oh, okay, that's important to know. So get over these things. But what I found is that as of the time that I'm thinking would be best to do this, there are then direct flights at a decent time to Chicago. So we can direct fly from Reno to Chicago, pick up one train in Chicago that goes 2 days all the way across, like it's 2 nights, 2.5 days sort of thing, all the way across to that upper portion. So we can see all of those states without having to like stay and do things or like it's cold, like whatever, like just see them, keep going. And then there is a place, because you can choose whether you end up in Portland or Seattle. It forks and you can choose which one you're on. And if we do the one that goes towards Seattle, I think, there is actually a stop, like 2 or 3 stops before Seattle, which is this quaint little German village in the mountains with a spa and all sorts of like really beautiful, like it's literally just they built a German village in the mountain, like an Alps German village. And I'm like, I want to go there. So that's going to be my suggestion rather than end up in Portland or Seattle because, like, I'm fine with both of them as cities. She's less of a city person. She doesn't like, we don't want to rent a car. We don't want to deal with traffic. We don't want to deal with that sort of stuff. And so I'm thinking that would be great because then it's just a hop, skip, and a jump. Like, on a small train, really easy. They leave constantly going back and forth to get over Seattle, pick up the big train that then would be the big view train for the one night overnight to go down to San Diego, and then we can fly back really easily from there after like a couple days in San Diego. We have a family member out there. I'm sure she'll want to say hello and da-da-da-da-da. So I'm like, in my mind, this is like, it takes a little over, probably about a week for the whole thing because we have a lot of friends in Chicago because we used to live there. So I'm like, that's an easy flight to get over there, spend a full day or 2 in Chicago, and then like, it's a 2-night train. Spend, like, 1 or 2 nights at that little German village. And then it's a 1-night train. And you get off, 1 night overnight. You get on the morning, get off, later the next day in San Diego. And then, so it's like, but I feel like we'd see a lot of things. If I had more time, I'd say, let's just keep, there's a lot of, you get to see a lot of things that aren't necessarily the easiest to get to or the easiest to see otherwise, which is the aspect that I really like there. So I'm like, I feel like this would be, it doesn't work. whatever. It's somewhere in that area. So I'm like, I feel like that would be a really fun week-ish trip. What I'm thinking would be ideal is if we do it over her birthday, which weather-wise, it should be good enough by then that, like, we don't have to worry about too much snow, but it'll be still snowy enough to be pretty, sort of thing. And then we can, cover both. Because, like I said, getting things for her, really complicated. But if this trip is a, Christmas gift in the planning and the purchase, and then a birthday gift in the doing, like, that sounds pretty ideal. Then I think she'll also be slightly more amenable to the prospect of moving. Because that was one of the few things that she had on her before I move list. Back to the East Coast. So, like, I think I can make this work. Like, that sounds like a fun thing, and then that could be a trip we can take together, and a vacation that should hopefully not be too stressful, because a direct flight to Chicago and a direct flight back from San Diego is very doable. You just don't want to bop. Like, no, it's not fun to do a whole bunch of multi-stop things. It's like just a couple hour plane trip is not bad if it's direct. So that's my current plan. Then I'll be in Chicago in March too, but unfortunately the direct flights that I like are not running yet. So I can't do any of the more pleasant flight options for that. I'm very disappointed. It's going to be expensive and take a long time to get there. Just grumpy about it. But whatever. See? It's now fully marked out for the front. I think this is the front. Yes, this is the front. The front is now marked out. I just have to do the same exact thing to the back. Which should be good enough. I'll have to double check if this spacing works for the shoulders. It should be close enough in the back. Like, there's probably a slight difference in size between the front and the back, but not much. A very small difference. The sleeves, I need to see if that proportion will work there, but hopefully it will. Should. I don't know. We'll figure it out. If it's a little bit off, I'll deal with it. So technically, I think I put these together slightly closer than I should have, but whatever. It's fine. Which piece is that? There's the back. How much wider is the front versus the back? I looked up this year's advent calendar. Historical fantasy. 8-year-old in a fake powdered wig. Whee! Oh yeah, these are really close. They're less than an inch, probably, in difference. So that's easy to accommodate. So, yes. Which probably means that the front's the ones. Okay. Cool. Okay. How many rows have I done on this one? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Probably just a couple more rows. And I can do vertical. So this one's actually pretty close. I did those earlier. I wasn't sure about the verticals yet, and I needed to do the math on that. The horizontals are pretty straightforward because I liked the spacing that I did before. So I need my tea to cool down so I can drink it, man. Historical fantasy, I feel like, is one of those things that can be done very well, or they don't. If you know you're doing historical fantasy, cool. If you just think you're doing historical, less cool. I don't think I can do all of the markings on my sleeves until I get this thing assembled, because I need them to match up with these, and I don't want to draw a whole bunch and then end up being just like a smidge off and having to like vary up as I go. So I'd rather hit those and then draw out. But I can do that, and then what I can do is not stitch up the side seams yet, which will allow me to open everything fairly flat, and then I can do up the side and underarm seams after I get everything marked. That should work pretty well. My dog demanding to go out. Like, get up! Okay, that should be somewhere in there for that point. Oh. I need to get VPN so I can watch Wilhelmina Crunk does whatever. Like, I started one of those series with her when I was in Scotland, and now I'm like, I need to watch all the other ones, and I am very depressed that I can't manage to find, like, aside from some random ones on YouTube, I cannot find any like Crunk on Britain or any of that stuff. I'm just like mad about it, because it is honestly some of the best history programming that I've seen, in terms of the fact that it's not intending to, like, it's educational a little bit, but it's just funny. It is just funny. All right, let's see. It's not quite cold enough, but it should be pretty close. Yeah, that's right at that. Like, it's just a couple degrees warmer than I normally would drink things. So, probably at the recommended level for tea. It's tea time. Yeah. Philomena Crunk. Oh, man. She's so funny. Yeah, Cunk. That's it. Cunk on Britain. Crunk. He's off by a letter. But yeah. If you can find that stuff, highly recommend it. It's like, I don't know, it's what I wish most. It's a history program. She basically goes around, if you don't know it, she goes around interviewing actual historians on different topics. But she plays a very satirical character, in the sense of takes the typical person that would normally be running that sort of historical programming and be like, today, like, I am the announcer, and here I will go to these knowledgeable people and ask them questions. But she plays a satirical version of it and makes fun of those programs the whole time. So she presents all of these completely inane, like, not at all factually correct things, as if it just is, and so then these poor historians have to, like, either play along or get very frustrated with the fact that, like, you can tell some of them know, or some of them get it, some of them play along and they're good, and then others are just like, really, there's a guy that's like, I think war like is a specialty, like battle stuff, and he is just clearly like it is so genuinely funny. I know you can find clips of it, of some of her different shows on YouTube. Do recommend it. Because, like, you do get information, like, the historians are giving you actual information, and the questions that she asks are so clearly not valid. Like, she'll ask questions about, like, lizard people or what. Like, it is absolute nonsense. I can see why it wouldn't work here in the US, because, one, we just don't have the stereotypical history programs like they do over on, like, BBC. I mean, it'd be more like making fun of, David Attenborough, like, wild world sort of things. But oh, it's so funny. It is absolute nonsense, and I love every minute of it. Like I said, I watched it originally in Scotland when I was like, I watch way too many what else was delivered? I watch way too many of those, like, British shows. for history and things like that. So, like, the opening of it is just so obvious. Yeah, I'm sure there are some people that at first think, but, like, then there are definitely moments you're like, wait, is that? No. Okay. Yeah, because then she brings out, like, the absolute nonsense stuff, and you're like, okay, there it is. But she makes it obvious, like, the opening sequence, which is meant to be very much, like, satire on the typical opening sequence for those British history shows. Like, she mixes things up on purpose and says things that just, you're like, I can see where this is going. Okay. Like, I think it's like, of United Britain of Kingdom. Like, just, but says it so seriously. So it works. In a weird way, it works. Yeah, I know. I try not to think about that. As somebody who worked, believe me, as somebody who worked at a living history museum that was very much the typical place for people to think patriotism. We're talking about the American Revolution in one of the towns that was a pivotal part of, the American Revolution and American, and I'm sure it is bad now. I have no doubt of that. But when I was there was the height of the beginning of the Merca, like, just absolute, before it became patriotism with Trump / racism / homophobia / all the other things that kind of got really smushed in there. When it was that, like, America thing back in the, like, early 2010s. That was when I was working there. And those people, oh my gosh. The things that they said, the questions they asked, because by that point it was becoming a religion, pretty much. That level of patriotism and everything was becoming a religion. But yes, it the moment you create one of those, you have a cult, and now it's gone too far. Not that it hadn't gone too far to begin with, but, like, because we knew early on that it was going to be a problem, because those people came in with questions that were like, I'm sorry, did you just feel comfortable asking me that because I'm a white person? Because you're going to be really sorely disappointed by this conversation. Like, the best, oh my gosh. So, I have to specify, I worked in the trade shops with the public, but I was always in a temporary position for those. So, I knew my job had an end date, regardless. And I also knew that all of the times that I worked, my supervisors totally had my back on any bullshit that happened. And I worked with a whole lot of people that were in the same situation, where they, especially as we got further into the project, like, whatever, go for it. And there were plenty of other people that worked at these places too that pretty much they could do just about anything, and they had very akin to tenure in a way. So they would have had to really mess something up in order to be kicked out, like validly do something wrong. And it's a historical museum. It's going to be fairly liberal because we all study history. And those people didn't realize that they're walking into a whole lot of actors and artists and liberal people who are very well educated. And my favorites were when they would try, because we had actors who were playing certain roles of historic people. There weren't a lot of them, but there were a few. And they'd be like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, people like that. And there were some people that were less famous names, but were really important in that region. And my favorite was when they would try to use their quotes against them, or bring up, well, I know you believe in this, or you agree with this, or whatever it was, but these people had spent decades at this point. Like, we now have old Washington, young Washington, old, like, old and young versions of each one of them, because they're kind of like training the new ones, because they reached a point where they're too old to really play it convincingly for the Revolution era. So they've been doing this for a while. And so they know every single thing that Jefferson ever said. They know every single thing, every single comment. They've analyzed it and spent years researching and trying to understand this person on a level that no one else in the world does. And so when these random tourists come in and try and be like, you believe this, you said this, and then they go, and they not only get to completely tell them, no, you're wrong, they get to do it in character, essentially. Because they can't say, like, oh, in fact, Jefferson quoted this in this year, da-da-da-da-da. And they have, like, a time limit. They can't quote themselves after that year that they're in. So they're really good about managing to just pull out, well, I said this, or I wrote this, or this person wrote this, and then I feel that, like, just the stuff that they would just, because they know, literally, they're basically being themselves at this point. Like, they've done that person, historical person, for so long, they are able to just be them. And, and so they were never, like, mean. They were never rude. They were having a valid discussion, because that was the thing I think that people are forgetting, is that politicians back in the 18th century had arguments and discussions, and that was just normal for them. And so they went at it from an 18th century politician standpoint, which is, yeah, you're going to get a slap down with words. And they're good at it. And there was Jefferson, the reason I keep honing in on Jefferson is because people really were loving on Jefferson. George Washington didn't say as much. Jefferson had a lot of words to say, and people liked to use his words against him. In the building we were in, there's a little gardeny area out back behind us. And the guy that did Jefferson things did small meetings back there occasionally. And there's also a larger theater just off to the side. And so we got a lot of people that had just been in the theater or the small little garden space talking to one of these people at some presentation or discussion or something where they had brought, and they'd come storming into our, like into the last place that they should have come storming into our little trade shop full of all of these like college and grad school students. And really well educated or like really well read, like, and when I say educated, not necessarily in the formal education way, but just people who read a lot and learned a lot, and that's why we were there. And we were all there on a temporary job assignment, not technically even being paid by Williamsburg. We were being paid by a different place, and we knew the one person in charge there, so we were good. So like, short of doing anything completely egregious, so like, they came in with the wrong attitude to the wrong place. Because they would come in and start going off about Jefferson, da-da-da-da-da. And then, like, when those people came in, it didn't matter who was up. There was one of two people that were going to step up and then continue to throw down with words. It was just... Oh, I witnessed so many absolute shutdowns. Like, it was the best. It was the best. My favorite one didn't even involve that. My favorite one. So I'm just not even working at this point. We had a space that was 2 rooms. We had the big room when you first entered, and that was where we were all working. And then there's a little side room that had like placards and things. So you could go see what the original tent looks like that we're copying. You could see what was going on, like, you know, educational boards and content. And some people wandered in there, you know, for a little bit, wandered back out, whatever. It was a slow day, and we had this guy, older guy, who came in, and he was just watching us work, and we're like, you know, person. I don't remember who it was on like, who was the tapped person, because we had like an hour or so slot for each person to talk. You know, we were the person that greeted and had discussions. And I'm pretty sure it was one of my friends who just... That's not... I don't know where the cares went of this stuff, but it left the window a long time, and we're like, you should not be in customer service, sir. You are way too smart for this and not able to handle it. And this guy just kept hanging out, and he wandered to the back, and he'd wander back out, and he'd just stare at us and just watch us. And we kept trying to engage him, like, do you have any questions or anything you want to talk about? How are you doing today? Like, anything. And he would give the shortest, curtest little answers, did not want to engage. It's like, why are you here? Why are you standing here staring at us? Because the issue is, we have to, if someone is standing in that room, we can't be having conversations with each other. we're on camera all the time because of the project we were doing was on camera all the time, but there's no sound associated. So we could have conversations, we could sing, we could talk, we could keep ourselves busy. But as long as this guy, and it had been like a good 20, 30 minutes, was just standing there staring at us, we had to just heads down, keep working. And this awkward person is just staring at us and kept pushing and pushing. And he was clearly getting frustrated that we were trying to engage with him. And he's like, I'm just waiting on my wife. And I was like, why are you waiting in here? Like, that's fine. Don't wait inside unless there are other people here or you want to engage with us. Like, that's fine. Just don't stand there and stare creepily at us. And I guess he eventually got fed up with us kind of like very gently pushing, please talk, let's just talk about something, like, oh, here's this interesting thing. Like, do you have any questions? And he finally just, fine. I don't know. Why are we here? And you could tell he was like trying to do that as a gotcha sort of thing. And my friend just was like, okay, and just started explaining in very detailed scientific ways the Big Bang Theory. And this man got progressively, you could just literally, like, it was like a cartoon, just the boiling water, the steam coming out the ears, everything just absolutely rising up. It's like full-on cartoon. And friend finishes up like the general spiel, and he just goes, well, if you believe that sort of thing, and stormed out. And we all were, hooray! So it was like, you're just, like, it felt after the first 5-10 minutes like he was doing it because he knew he was bothering us. He knew that he was being, that he had like a power trip out of this, I'm the only person here and I'm just gonna watch all of you work, like, the foreman of the like, you could tell that there was definitely a power play here, and it was like, no, we're done with this. And I have so many stories from that experience. So many good stories. It was a crazy experience, but so good. Okay, so that one I ended up at 7 3/4 for each. I don't think that'll quite work for this. That was also down that distance. So if I did that, it would be there. But yeah, it was an amazing job to get to do all of that stuff, but like, situationally it was so much more difficult for so many people because they weren't able to just be like, nope, I have immunity here, I am protected, if I anger a guest it's not a big deal. So I was always happy when I was in one of the other places that I worked. I was in with a whole bunch of permanent employees that couldn't fend for themselves in the same way. That's a good way of putting it. And so I was always glad to pick those things up. Not that it was really, like I said, most of the time it wasn't an issue unless you were working in a site where you had a boss, manager, whatever, that was not on your side, which most places, that wasn't the issue. In that regard, at least. So we were relatively decently supported when it came to protection from people, because you could tell, you could always tell. Ooh, neat, Red Thread has got more things. Oh, Cindy's got more things. You could always tell when someone was the type that was just complaining. Like, it was obvious. No, I did not want that. It was always really funny. Honestly, more often than not, especially when the complaints were just like, I went in there and a person was rude to me. And, like, occasionally it was a little more descriptive than that, but usually it was not. So we'd have, in a lot of the shops, we'd have readings of, like, hilarious, complaints from people. Yeah, those are good. For people who need a bit of, there we go. It's a nice shape. She always has a nice shape. My only issue with her stuff is that I am short-waisted. She is not, and her patterns are not. Which is fine, like, that's pretty adjustable in most patterns, but yeah. Oh, that sounds like a really fun thing where you get to actually, like, have a little bit of leeway with character, customer stuff. Yeah, sometimes we had some things that ended up getting essentially destroyed based off of customer complaints over the years, but I think they didn't happen too often. Yeah, I do like her front plate better. That is a good. I didn't note that when I looked at it. I'm like, yes, that is a nice point in the front. So like the butcher program that they used to run. I always say we. It's gonna never really change. Worked there long enough, you were just permanently part of it. They got rid of that because of, well, they're basically just a few miles away from PETA. And PETA's they're not super active locally, but just enough. How can you tell if you're short or long-waisted? In my case, change this. So, to show the difference, my lowest solid rib is right there. That's the bottom of my rib right there. And then my hip bone is right there. So I have that much space between rib and hip bone, which is not very much. So that's why I can't corset, because I only have, in reality, that much of me that is squishable on the side. In general, I have very long legs, so if you find that you have very long legs in comparison or things like that, like, I am 5'4", average height, though they usually make pants, trousers for women longer, went more for like a 5'6", but they always fit me, so I have the legs of a 5'6" woman. I've definitely noticed that, but I am not 5'6". Like, one of the things you can do is, especially if you have friends that are the same height as you, get everybody to kind of stand in a row and show where your hip bone is, and you will see such variance of what that means. Abby is the same height as I am, and her hip bone is, like, about that much further down than mine. So her waist, she's long-waisted. So I have about that much more in my legs. Like, she just has that in her torso instead of her leg. Like, so there's that much of a difference with us. It is significant. Which means that she corsets really easily because she's got plenty of space to squish in. I do not. I have no, like, it's too solid right in there. I also find that a lot of corsets or things when I put them on, I get wrinkles, especially in the back because my waist is also very angled up towards the back. So I'm even more high-waisted in the back. So I have to usually take patterns and cant them and really work it up in the back to get rid of that. Otherwise I get pressure on my lower back and over my hips, which is really uncomfortable. So yeah, if you are long-legged, you are probably short-waisted. That's a good way of putting it. So yeah, I've just always had long legs and I can't corset. And I have things that wrinkle up, and if we'll put it this way, if you've ever put on a pair of high-waisted pants and gone, I have no torso now, this touches my underbust, then that's usually a good sign. But if you're one of those people that can put on high-waisted pants and be like, this is mid-rise, you're long-waisted. So, that's the difference. Yeah, and, like, that's the amazing thing. So, Chrissy, Abby, and I are very similar in size. And there have been periods of time where we're basically all the same measurements. We just all go up and down different. When we gain weight, we all gain it in different places. So, all three of us are different fluctuations and different places that we carry our weight and muscles and different things like that. But we are all the same height, and we are all pretty similar in measurements, and have been exactly the same in certain points. So we are very often able to wear each other's clothing. But Abby and Chrissy, who are both long-waisted, have a really easy time with it. I can't for a lot of the things that they are able to. So, but yeah, so it's just proportions, man. They are different for everybody, and that's completely normal. So, and that's the thing, like, I loved how I'm like, no, when people are like, my body's weird, my body's difficult, no, there is no such thing as that. Stop saying that. The only reason that some people, which aka most people, think that their bodies are difficult or whatever is because they are not whatever random, like, model measurement system we've got going. And most people aren't. It's just some people are close enough that they can manage it when things are stretchy. But the vast majority of people, it's like I say with patterns, you feel like you might be a difficult size until you start getting into a whole lot of indie pattern companies. And then you realize that whatever their pattern system is based off of whatever they are. Whoever creates those patterns to begin with will create a body block that is somewhat similar to them. And then it will work on people like them. And so you start to realize that all it is, it's like, you just don't have that one pattern company that you like, that the person is similar proportions to you. So it's just, at that point, a random thing. Like, it's not, one's more complicated than the other. It's just a luck of the draw as to whether or not you've come across a pattern company that does patterns like you like and happens to be similar proportions, and therefore body blocks are going to be close. Like, the odds of me finding that are very rare, just because of the size of my shoulders and the proportions that I have. I'm very, like, oval. I'm not very round. I'm very wide and very narrow this way. I always have been. Even when I was much smaller, much less muscle, I still had those same issues. So it's like there's a range of, like, I've been doing this thing with a range of 40 pounds on me, and some of that, went up, then went down with exercise, but went up with muscle, just every which way. And so I've got a full variety of where things have sat and how squishy they've been over the years. Never, like, I've been able to fit into things, but it's never been, like, right. I've always had to adjust, especially on shoulders and things like that. And it's like, no, you just learn what you need to adjust commonly for your body. And everyone has a few things. Everyone has a list of a few things they have to do. That's fine. So, yeah. And, like, when you think historically, there were no such things as sizes and even measurements. It was just you are your own pattern. I'm excited. I had an invitation to talk on a podcast next year about the whole history of sizes and why it's stupid. So I'm very excited to get to talk about that more. I was hoping when I did that video that it would go, I don't want to say further than it did, I'm not sure that's the right word for it, but make its way further outside of the costuming community into actual, like, I'm like, this is something that this is why I made this channel. I'm like, this is the stuff that I want more people to know. And so I was already planning on reaching out to a friend who does. Like, she's gotten pretty big on Instagram. Body, just post babies and all that stuff, stuff that she goes through. So I'm like, I was already considering reaching out to her, but these people reached out to me first, so I'll probably talk to her later too and be like, I feel like this is something that you and your audience would like to hear about too. But I will definitely let everyone know when that, like, becomes a thing. We won't be recording until probably January, so. Pattern sizing, another example of how the 1950s screwed us for sewing, probably. I mean, the fact that patterns in general, so it's like, when you think about it, when you go back far enough, why this is like trying to focus on the wrong things. It's so very weird. When you go back far enough, patterns don't have sizes. So you look back at like late 19th century things, it comes in, this is the one thing. And then you adjust it to fit you. It's more like, this is kind of like a shape rather than a pattern, which is the way that tailoring started off, where you would have shapes of, here's the fashionable shape, and then you would adjust it to fit the person's measurements. So yeah, it's just, yeah, it's like, I've heard so many rants about how the modern sizing system is nonsense. I just don't know anybody else who's done as much with the weird history. Like, I've seen short form histories, which is why I did the longer form history version where I really got into it, because I've seen the short form, they're like, it happened in 1939 and they did da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, well, we gotta go back further, because it starts further back than that. Like, we have to have a discussion prior to that and discussion of it afterwards, because it's not just they did this and they did it poorly. It's they did this, they didn't do it poorly necessarily, they did it to the level that they thought they needed to. And they said at the time, this is not meant to be the end-all be-all. This is just meant to be additional information for companies to decide. That's all it was. And like, when you suddenly look at it that way, and the thing that, and I didn't talk about it as much in the video, and I'm hoping I talk a little bit more about in the podcast, the true reason it really fails is not just that it was not meant to succeed in the way that we do it now. It's the fact that they were giving this as additional information to companies that were building locally for their specific audience in their local area. And so they would know who they were selling to and what was selling in the stores. So they'd be like, this is the sort of clothing that our market likes. These are the sort of people that we're selling to. And these are the sizes that sell. Then they would take that additional information and apply it for extra, like, what like proportions would be common, and you adjust to what your local audience needs. That doesn't work when you've got companies that are now making the same dress for multiple cities, multiple countries. It doesn't work because they're not changing the proportions and the measurements of the dress, the pants, whatever it is, for the different places that they're selling it. They're assuming a homogeneous population that was never meant to be assumed. The people that came up with this thing in the 1930s didn't think, like, they knew that would be a problem in the sense of, like, that's not how that's supposed to work, but they never thought of, like, internationally acclaimed companies selling all over the world with people not getting to try things on or have things adjusted and custom fit to them, because that was also normal. To have things adjusted and custom fit, they also recommended not just sizes, but sizes in, like, at least 3 columns. So that way you had the mid column, which is all we've got now. You had the slender and you had the curvy. They didn't call them that, but essentially that's what it was. The slender turned into teenagers' clothing, and the curvy turned into plus size, which only exists in one very small, like, it's like, and so basically they developed into those things. They just developed into those. They're like, well, the only people that are really slim like this are the super young and trendy, so we're just going to make it that. And the only people that are this are these older people who don't want it, and so we're going to make that. And we'll just leave the normal. It's like, and yeah, and they also, notably, these sizes, the measurement system that they came up with was not meant to be applied to things like that, because they didn't have women's trousers commonly in the 1930s. Like, they were a thing, but not a thing. And a lot of places only applied it to a few types of things, like just women's dresses. Most places only applied that measurement system and that proportion system and size system to just women's dresses for a very long time. That was it. And they're like, no, this won't work for blank, 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 blank. And that, you know, some of those measurement systems, the additional measurement system like bras and things like that, we did keep, but yeah, it'd be so much simpler. And I really, and I've got all these ideas of, like, how easy it would be for companies or even for us as individuals to help with this, but it's like, man, I just want to end up, like, this is the one thing that I will stand behind and would gladly, like, I don't want to say sacrifice the entirety of most of the other stuff that I do, but this is the one thing where if I went viral for something and ended up, like, doing talks on fancy news shows or whatever, this is the one topic that I would, like, I would like this one because I think this would be the most helpful. Is it my favorite topic to talk about? Not necessarily, but I think it's the most important. It is the one thing that I will just yell about all the time. Yeah, wrap dresses. I know. And they were popular. Guess what? In the 30s and 40s, when, I don't know, the sizing system came out. I mean, we were doing sizing before then, and the reason for the measurement and the sizing system wasn't everyone fits into this. It was literally, it's getting frustrating that women go shopping in this store and then this store next door, and they're different numbers. That was all it was meant to be, that people could walk from one store to the one next door and it would be similarly sized. That was the entire point of it. Was if you're starting a company, you don't know where to begin with, like, proportions as you're coming up with patterns, here's like a cheat sheet to give you a beginning, and when you walk from one place to another locally, they're gonna be similar-ish. They were trying to get rid of vanity sizing. That was a huge thing that they talked about all the time in all the conversations around it, was vanity sizing is a problem. It's like, so we need to stop that. And what if we continue to do? I don't know. Vanity sizing. But, like, it's just, yeah. Hence why people are like, like, Marilyn Monroe was a size whatever, and it's like, yeah, that's not the same as today. So, sizes mean nothing. They're just a bunch of made-up numbers. I honestly don't even think measurements on the body make sense, because there's too many of them for them to actually make anything valid. And you're squishy or not in different ways. It doesn't matter. None of the measurements are the same. Like, bodies are not solid, structural, consistent objects. Take your measurements in the morning, they're different than their measurements after a meal or getting off of an airplane, or, like, no. We're supposed to be squishy and changeable and malleable. It's fine. And, like, the systems that we used to have for fitting clothing was fitting clothing to our bodies, not fitting us into clothing or coming up with what clothing would fit around us. It was fitting it on us. It was either draping the fabric over us and cutting and pinning and, like, you are this shape and size. It doesn't matter what it is. It's you sized. Or for tailoring, like I said, paper tapes with notches. No numbers were used. You are this. That is what it is. Doesn't matter. It doesn't translate to anything. There's no way for you to get self-conscious about this. I mean, come on. Yeah. So, and, like, stays, the way stays are made as our, like, structural, complicated, super fitted, whatever garment, very often there's evidence that a lot of places that sold them sometimes would sell them as you come in, get measured, and you can pick your stays up later that day, and we're like, that's physically impossible. But then Mark realized what it was is the fact that they had all the different panels, and they would have one shape and, like, a whole bunch of different sizes of each panel pre-made. And then they would pick which panels match up to make your stays for U-shaped, because, you know, there are going to be ones that are more flared or more this or more that or whatever, and you just assemble the panels that add up to the right pair of stays. And so they would already be completely pre-done. You just slap them all, seam them together, and bind. Some even seemed maybe pre-bound around, like, the lower edges or something. So, done. And when you think about bodies like that, it's like, yeah, because you'd have to choose different fronts, different sides, different backs, depending on what your problems are. Which is one of the reasons, like, I really want to do a how to fit stays, very detailed how to fit stays video, where I'm just showing all of the different, if this part is this too wide or too narrow, this is what it looks like. Because usually it's not one problem, it's like 3 problems in different places. But yeah, there were no, like, there were not concerns over that. Those concerns were only concerns of the middle and lower classes starting in, like, the early 20th century, because prior to that, things were adjustable and changeable, and it was only the people that were buying off the rack and didn't have the money or availability of someone to adjust it for them. And even then, it was considered pretty normal that you would go out, purchase your clothing, take it home, and adjust it yourself if you couldn't afford someone else to do that. So it's not until really even like the 70s when we get into Jersey Knit will make everything unisex. And I also highly recommend the video that I'm putting on the first, though it is meant to be lighthearted about future fashion, like prediction stuff. There is definitely like you can, there was stuff in there that I was like, oh, with starting essentially in like the 1940s, but really ramping up in the 60s and 70s. They love talking about how they think science is going to make the body perfect, and that through diet, through science, like scientific diet, through all of this basically eugenics / dieting. Hello. Well, thank you for joining. Everybody will have the perfect body, and we'll have the stretchy fabric for everything, and it'll just be unisex, one size fits all, like super easy, da 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 da. And like that was the future forecasting that they were doing in the 70s. Was that concept. And it's like, no. And you think about how and that is the era where we stopped thinking we had to adjust our clothing, where we stopped like thinking that was just a normal thing. You took it home and you adjusted it to fit you, and it wasn't bad or good. It just, you adjusted it. That was just part of it. And that one size fits all, like, it comes with stretch fabric, it comes with the mindset, all of the weird eugenics stuff, like it all adds up so quickly when you get to about the mid 20th century and we start really getting into all the sci-fi future stuff and science and all of those things. Yeah, if we could do gene editing here at EDS, that would be great. So, yeah, definitely. But yeah, it's just... And I mean, that's the thing, like, it sucks in the fact that we don't have someone to point to and blame it on. And I know, like, we tend to blame a lot of the modern perceptions of what we're supposed to look like on, like, the 90s heroin chic, like, horrible fashion stuff. But it was already there. It was already percolating. It literally was just following through with what they had been predicting for decades. Like, we were just already getting there slowly. It's fast fashion and stretchy stuff, and our expectation that we will fit into our clothing rather than our clothing will fit us. And people not knowing how to sew and to adjust their clothing, and all the predictions that sewing as a thing will die out. They started making those in the 70s. So it's a combination of many things that have led us to this point of absolute disaster, which I think we have the technology and understanding to start fixing, but it, like anything else, it takes time, because you literally have to let people age out of the system that are still controlling that stuff and still have that mindset. There's still way too many older people in the fashion industry that aren't going to let go of that look. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was, like, thankfully I was raised on that mindset of not judging my body based off of measurements or anything, but basing it off of what it can manage to do, which was still under the guise of, like, health. Like, not everybody can do everything, and just trying to do the best you can for your body so that way it can do as much as it is capable of and you treat it correctly. Like, I'm very glad that I was raised on that, even though, like, my mother definitely was not to some extent. Like, she's definitely got a lot of latent stuff, but she tried very hard not to pass that on to me in the same way that she could have. I don't remember her dying until I was older. And by that point I was already so ensconced in not understanding diet culture and all that stuff. I was like, I don't get these teenage girls that I'm around. They confuse me. So, I'm like, So, yeah, agreed. I just wish my body was up to doing what I used to be able to do and all that. But that's about it. Yeah. I'm excited about the next video. It's almost finished. I got enough of it done to send it off to sponsor for approval way early because holidays. So hopefully I'll get that early next week and I can finish the whole thing up and it'll be out on the 1st. And I'm very excited because it's a really fun video. There's some wacky stuff in there. And then this thing will be the next one, which is basically, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it or present it, because it's basically the fact that the Victorian response with the anti-corset dress reform was basically knightcore, princess core, however you want to present it. Like, basically they're like, what if we did medieval? Then it wouldn't be ugly, and you don't have to wear a corset. And, like, that was their response, as, you know, because obviously the dress reform, healthier clothing for women started much earlier in the century, but basically everyone's complaint was, but it's ugly. And then you hit the 1880s and they're the pre-Raphaelites and everybody was just like, but what if we made it, like, medieval? And then that's also the era that a whole bunch of fairy tale books and illustrated books are really becoming a big thing. And so they're like, what if we present this same imagery in fairy tale books? And so now we have, like, all of this mushy stuff that just, like, all of this stuff around the pre-Raphaelites and all of that comes together into our concept of what fairy tales and medieval and knightcore and all of that stuff looks like. All just smushed into one happy little bundle that is tied in with all of the women need to be able to wear more comfortable, functional clothing, but still look cute. I'm like, I feel like this answers our modern problems too. Because it's totally, yeah, knightcore, cottagecore, like all that. I'm like, this is answering our modern problems of wanting to be fashionable but comfortable. We're just doing this again. It's like 140 years later, but we're literally coming to the exact same conclusions that this group did. We're just doing it again. And Abby's already done a video related to this where she basically talked about how that pre-Raphaelite group was basically like Instagram way back in the late 19th century. Like they were doing full-on selfies, they did full-on cottagecore, like everything. It was so hardcore, like into all of that. And I'm like, it's just repeating itself. It is so doing it. So I'm just trying to figure out how to, like, title it, because it's like, ideally, if I can put Victorian and corset in the title, that's the Victorian anti-corset fashion was medieval. Medieval nightcore, or whatever. It so was. Like, I've already made one thing, and then, I put it on, I was like, why do I feel super medieval about that? Like, fairy tale, I just stared at it for a while, and I was like, oh. And then I just started connecting pre-Raphaelites to the fact that, like, the pre-Raphaelites were the ones that were either the artists or inspiring the artists of fairy tale books, and it just kept going from there, so. Yeah. Yep, so we'll see how that works out. My videos have been so weird lately in terms of, like, algorithm and stuff, so I have no way to predict anything. My last 2 videos were, like, meh. And then some random point, a few days in, 3 days in, 8 days in, they just went with, like, no reasonability to it. I am so confused by it. It hurts my head, and I can't predict anything. My current one is just doing this. My recent one, like, it was not good, and it just did that. But not because YouTube started recommending it to people, and people started, because an outside source, which usually gives me something usable, the outside source that it's giving me and telling me that it's coming from is Google search. I don't know what Google search I'm showing up on. Or if that's just a catch-all that they're using for other I don't know how they can record that in the same. Because, like, I know when you Google search things, sometimes videos get recommended. So I'm like, what? Are people just searching short hair? And I'm being recommended as a video and they're clicking on it? Because they're not always watching for a long time. But, like, it just got Yeah, short hair. So it's just Victorian's short hair. It's just, I don't know why it's popping up for people, but like most of my views have come from Google search results, which is like tenuous at best and a little concerning. Unfortunately, that also means that I'm getting paid almost nothing for this video because that completely tanked my what it wants to pay me because it's not an audience that it likes, that finds valuable. So I'm like, I'm getting tons of views on this, no money. So I'm just so confused. I don't feel like I'm doing things wrong, but I'm also so confused as to how I'm doing things right. I don't know what's happening, and this previous video did a similar thing where it was that, and I'm like, I don't know why. It just started doing that. And the one before that was like super high at the top, and then it just plateaued, and I don't know. It's all very weird. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, we're coming to, and that's what I'm trying to ride on. Like, I promised myself I didn't want to do a whole bunch of, Gonzo, yeah. I didn't want to do a whole bunch of, like body image stuff in January, and so I thought the future fashion thing might be more fun. It seems appropriate if it's something to do with, like, fashion predictions or whatever. I'm like, I feel like that might flag enough on people's, like, search things, so we'll see. Yeah, I don't know, because it doesn't tell me what people searched for. It just says Google search, and I'm like, that's not helpful. If it's something like Twitter or Reddit or even Facebook, sometimes I can find where it is and then I see why. But it's very weird. It keeps doing this. Like, I'll get just a few thousand people and then just nothing for like a couple hours, and a few thousand people click on it. It's just so weird. It's stressful. Like, I don't know how to keep up with this. But it's okay. I'm fine with it. It's just very weird. And it's making me very confused as to how to go forward in the next year with what types of videos, because nothing has been predictable. Oh yeah. Make sure you click on the thing to see the full version, because it doesn't just automatically play the full version for you. So make sure you do that. Okay, I need to go start dinner. And it's just reheating Popeyes, but that takes like half an hour, so I need to go eat. So thanks guys for hanging out. I'll probably be back again tomorrow, doing the same thing. I will probably try to get it stitched together before then, so that way I can get all of the rings of everything done, but I'll be back tomorrow working on this, so I'll see you guys quite soon. Bye.